This interview is with Leo Pareja, CEO of eXp. No intro needed, very boisterous in the industry. You've seen a headline with Leo. If you want to get into the mind of the CEO at eXp, this is the interview to do it. I asked him questions he hasn't been asked before. He's actually going to be a speaker at BAM BBQ this summer. That's a free virtual event. I'll drop the link down below. Sign up, attend in July. If you like this style of content, we're actually filming this right at the Housing Wires event, The Gathering. I dropped their YouTube channel down below. You can check it out. There's a lot of great stuff there. Now enjoy the interview.
And I told him, I was like, look, if I get loud, I'm not going to censor myself. Like, I'm going to be the unbridled version of myself. And then that Monday morning, I went live to 53,000 people showed up concurrently. Jack Miller called me the next day. He's like, I think you've garnered the single largest concurrent audience ever in our industry.
Leo Pareja, the CEO of eXp, very powerful position in our industry, is continuing to say, I've got big opinions on business models. I'm not afraid. I'm not vanilla. I'm not going to ride the fence.
I'm 42. I'm the first millennial to get the keys to one of these.
Did you smile when Sharran was, hey, I'm out of day-to-day at Rio?
We process roughly 300,000 tickets on a monthly basis, pick up 30-some thousand live phone calls with less than 37-second hold time with a 90% resolution score. I think attention is the new oil, and it's been for a while. And I think especially with, how I think we're about to commoditize all forms of communication, written, digital, verbal. And so attention is going to be even more valuable.
You're still aggressive against business models that you don't think serve customers. What's the biggest business model fail you're seeing right now? Our first real conversation was last summer, the business model discussion. I took the stance of like, hey, business models are business models. I'm just not going to be really telling somebody what to do with a business model. For sure, like you and James, who I just had on, we're like, no, this is the model. This is the way it has to be. And we're talking about shared compensation. I think we've all generally landed in the same spot. Compensation, put it into the offer. I talked about with James, there's like potentially situation strategy where making the offer make sense. Broker paying that, something eXp doesn't do, doesn't make sense. We're on alignment there. Fast forward to today, Leo Pareja, the CEO of eXp, very powerful position in our industry, is continuing to say, I've got big opinions on business models. I'm not afraid. I'm not vanilla. I'm not going to ride the fence like so many CEOs before me, not in my company, but generally in the industry. And still today, they'll get up on panels and dance around every important question and just speak in generalities. You don't do that. You're still aggressive against business models that you don't think serve customers. Yeah. What's the biggest business model fail you're seeing right now?
So it's funny because, it'll feel like I'm the face of a subject for a while. And then after a while, it's like, hey, let's move on and then operate the business. So obviously compensation was a very important one last summer. And you and I got to meet while I was on my family vacation. And props to you. So if anybody doesn't know how that went down, my dear friend, Ricky Caruth, shared a conversation, and it was like comma, and it went viral, and you made a video about it. And I woke up to umpteen text messages and DMs, and I called you and I said, let's go live right now. And you were like, right now? And I was like, right now. And so I found Wi-Fi and we went live like an hour later and had I think an awesome constructive conversation.
And everybody enjoyed it. And I'm like, dude, this guy Leo's a grinder. Like, man, the guy's you were somewhere beautiful.
Catalina.
With the family. 99% of CEOs are just like, I'm going to put out some kind of statement, whatever, and I'm going to go back to my vacation or ignore it. You're like, dude, I'm finding Wi-Fi. Let's go. Totally respect it.
Well, because like I have so much respect for the practitioner, right? Like agents, especially in that moment in time, were so confused. Like, that weekend when the news dropped, before I made the decision, I'm going back to March 15th, it was like hundreds of text messages and direct messages of parents, because they're like, I'm the parent of a single led household. and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to feed my kids because I don't understand how to move forward. So I feel like I owe them this level of transparency, right? And I tell them all the time, like, hey, I reserve the right to be wrong and change my mind. And by the way, I have no problem apologizing and going, you know what? I kind of missed it on that one. But I think it's about just being radically authentic. And I don't know that anyone likes sitting on the fence. It's like it's a non-answer. It's like if you're going to give a non-answer, just don't show up. But if you're going to show up, have an opinion.
Yeah. And you've had an opinion
about everything, I guess.
On exclusives. So let's just go there.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, mine comes from our global footprint, right? So I operate in 27 countries. Last year, if you look at the real trends, we're both sitting at the gathering today. We are ranked at 350,000 transactions, which is a phenomenal number. What most people don't know is we did 518,000 globally, right? So in Canada, the third largest brokerage in the UK, the fifth largest in South Africa. I have 1,300 agents in South Africa, right? We sell in the UK. We're third by transactions. The two companies ahead of us are like, I don't know, 200 years old, like Foxtons, right? And so we have this super interesting vantage point where I know the pain and struggle that agents go through and, people that identify as real estate professionals in countries that don't have our infrastructure. And I think our ecosystem is more delicate than people think, right? So I built MLS software, so I have a very different vantage point. I actually know all the business rules. I know the intricacies. I know how it works. And when I was building my software company, I actually went to Japan. Japan, who is a super organized country, fantastic price point, very rules oriented, was like, we want what you guys have. And I tried to explain to them, I was like, you're missing organized real estate, right? Like it or hate it, it is first of all, it was like an organic thing that happened over decades and it came to be. And I've been on stages in my last capacity where I said, the reason North American real estate exists the way it does is a two-sided coin. And this is on record at CMLS like 7 years ago. I said half of that is cooperative compensation, right? There's an incentive to work together. And by the way, I wish I would have been deposed during that because I didn't hear a single person articulate to go, hey, a buyer compensation is lead gen. It's no different than the dealerships use. It's an incentive. Look, we have 1.6 million people that we ask to put strangers in their cars and work for 6 months for a fee. Like It is demand lead gen. Don't call it buyer compensation. Call it what it is. It is demand lead gen. It is not free. It is not there's a reason you're mobilizing this army of folks. In Spain, if I were to show you properties, the portal, the Zillow of Spain is called Idealista. And if you're like, hey, Leo, hook me up with a house in, San Sebastian, I want to learn to surf and spend my summers there. We were talking about where you spend your summers. We could go on Idealista and I could find you the same property listed 9 different times with different prices, with different agents, right? Like there's so much that we take for granted. And so half that coin is cooperative compensation. The other is called mandatory participation. Because some people are like, what's CCP? It's mandatory participation. And so what the MLS is actually a data cooperative. And I get really upset when people call it a database. I'm like, it's a cooperative. And the way all cooperative work is we agree to the same rules. I give you all my data, which by the way, is crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty valuable.
I'm going to give you all my data as a competitor.
Everything I have.
Like, wait a second. Just appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know why we do that? Because you promise to do the same thing on the same day, under the same rules. Not if it feels like it and the weather's nice and it's 90 days later and it's a Tuesday. No, I give it to you in 24 hours. You give me it in 24 hours. And so what happens
and consumers have a marketplace.
Well, because of it. So you can join an MLS for roughly between $25 and $50 in any one of these great states. And you can set up a website, byronrealestate.com. And you have the total data set.
Yeah.
Right. So the incumbent in the UK is called Wright. Last year, Rupert Murdoch tried to buy it.
Yes.
3 offers. The last one was like $8.3 billion. If you do the math by the number of homes sold in the UK and transactions and compared it to the US, Rightmove is 3 times more valuable than Zillow because it's an advertising model. My single biggest expense on my P&L in the UK is the massive fees I have to pay to Rightmove. It's £50 per month per active listing.
Wow.
Yeah. And guess what? Every year they raise my prices 10% because they can, because they own the eyeballs. And so is our system perfect? No, I've said that the whole time. But the alternative is like, and by the way, this is the part that I will want to bring up. There is no gray. Either we cooperate or we don't. We don't kind of do it.
So advocate for cooperative real estate, organized real estate, however you want to label that.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful positions in our industry that you sit in. So you have a direct line to Nikki, right? And I understand she only can control the business side of NAR. I look at NAR and the business side is broken. There's too many lanes we're trying to cover. NAR can't do education the way brokers can. NAR can't do training. Now they can do advocacy and that kind of thing. They're stripping down, in Nikia's words today on stage, de-risking, meaning getting rid of every rule they've ever invented so that they don't get sued again to protect what they have. You have a line to her. If I'm an advocate for organized real estate, I have to be an advocate for fixing NAR. What's your process on helping NAR get into a position that they can actually keep real estate organized?
Yeah. So look, hats off to Nikki. I don't want that job.
Yeah.
That seems like a not too fun job. And the position I took since I've been in the role is I'm going to do what's best for the consumer and my agents, whether I agree or disagree with NAR, right? Like when the agreement came out, that's what you and I discussed when I was sitting in Catalina. Paragraph 19 completely contradicts paragraph 32.
Right.
We
went through it.
It is a perfect example of like trying to thread the needle and make everyone happy.
Yep.
And then again, in March of this year,
delayed
marketing is a pacifier for the other side.
Yep.
And it's a like everybody won and no one wins.
Yeah.
Right. So, and again, I came out and said, I'm not doing that. Here's our no disclosure form. And we're just not playing.
Side note, I've said this on, I don't know, so much content, Bobby, like the disclosure forms, the buyer forms that you guys have done. We'll put a link down below. It's world-class. It's leading the industry. It's simple. It's stuff people can understand, and you've open sourced it. And so I want to make that clear. I've made it clear in other pods, but your forms that you've shared with the industry is a gift to the industry. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And again, I think you believe me because you've gotten to know me, but I don't think most people believe me. It was like me and Holly with a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, what's the minimum standard to make it legal, ethical, and enforceable, like meeting in the minds? And like, if it doesn't need to be in there, I don't want it in there. And by the way, I want it in English. I don't want it in legalese. And so this March, the update, we created the seller advisory disclosure form where it's like, hey, by the way, I'm not against seller choice. And by the way, seller choice is like great marketing speak. Who's against seller choice? But like, who would be against clear cooperation, right? And so going back to your question of NAR, what are they? They give us an advocacy framework, which I think is up for debate how well they've done recently. But again, I'm very pragmatic. So the framework of associations and MLSs that gives us business rules is still under their purview. I think it's up for debate if it stays under their purview. You know what the other thing that's massively under their purview? Forms, right? So I'm now in the form business as of last summer.
Yeah.
I'm not in the purchase and sale form business, right? So let's take the state I grew up in, Virginia. There's probably distinctly 4 regional forms. I was licensed in the state of Maryland. That is like a tiny state with more forms than I can count, right? And so, I think the transaction of I pay dues and you give me stuff is still way worth it, right? Like if I have to create purchase and sale forms in all 50 states, that's a headache, right? And so I think in all transactions, right, it's like, and by the way, I've been talking about this with compensation. What I do like that came out of last year's agreement was that there is a forced function where it's like, hey, by the way, I'm actually representing you as the agent, and this is what I'm going to charge you for the services I'm willing to render. And that it could be a flat fee, it could be a percentage, it could be whatever you want it to be. But I think in all relationships and trends, I just think I'm very pragmatic. So, you know, and I'm not shy to say this, agents will say, are we going to leave NAR? I'm like, as long as they render the services that we need for the fee we're willing to pay, why would we? Right? Like, do you understand what it looks like on its own without it? Because I think people make emotional, reactions and don't think of the logic of what goes with it. It's like, okay, do you know what we get for that? And oh, by the way, part of the settlement is we're covered going forward. Like, for anyone thinking of like, I'm leaving NAR, you're no longer covered. Catchmark can come take another bite at that apple.
Yeah. Can you get more influence into the, Nikia's on stage talking about conversations with brokers through Cherry Chris. Those aren't open to members. Those are all happening behind closed door. Like, where are you at on getting your voice heard? Because listen,
that's a fair question.
Cherry Chris, decades of experience with her friends in the industry. She's super successful and she's made a huge impact on this industry, but decades of relationships that are part of that club. And so now that's Nikia's club. I wouldn't place you in that club, and you've got some really interesting thoughts. Is your voice being heard?
Yeah, no, I like, it's heard for as much as I want it to be heard. Like, I am not, I'm not at all the conferences. Like, I'm actually almost exclusively at eXp events and then a couple of other ones. I think I'm probably noticeably absent at events. And again, it's not me thinking it's not worth my time. I prioritize my agents.
Yeah.
Like I said it on stage earlier, I spend 60 to 80% of my days talking to agents one-to-one or one-to-many. And so I think I just have a different way of prioritization. That's probably why I feel so close to the transaction and what are you experiencing? Like, I didn't write that agreement in a vacuum. I wrote it after like listening to a lot of people who were really worried and upset. And they're like, well, if I have to do this in the driveway, can you get it down to one page? Can you make it in English? And I'm like, yeah, let's go work on that.
So where did you come from? People don't know. Glenn Sanford is very different than Leo Pareja. Very different. I mean, to say that you're not out there, you're out there way more than Glenn Sanford is or was. You've got a different style, communication style. I think it's better suited for the role. Not that Glenn Sanford's not a visionary, certainly is. He's got his role. You guys are different. What's your background? I think everybody knows kind of what Glenn's is. You didn't come out of nowhere. How did you get here?
Yeah, so I got licensed at 18 years old as a college student. I went to college during the tech bubble. I picked the year 2000 to get into software. And my freshman year of college, the offers I had from MCI and WorldCom, they said, if you just get a 4-year degree, we'll hire you and give you like $150,000, which that back then was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And by my sophomore year, all those jobs had disappeared. And it was interesting because like I'm a dad to a 10 and an 8-year-old, and like the littlest thing can just trigger them. It's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And I remember as a sophomore year being like, oh my God, my whole plan's ruined. It's like, I'm a child. Who cares, right? I read a book because a friend's mom told me to read it, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. And the first time I ever heard of people, time, and money leverage, I got obsessed. I wanted to be an investor. I went to an event, a real estate investor meetup, and I met a gentleman who put the event on, and I asked him if I could take him to coffee. I was like 19 years old. And I offered to work for free. And I was like super excited. I had read books. I'm like, this is the offer. And the guy looked at me and goes, I don't have time to teach snot-nosed kids stuff, which was very depressing. But he introduced me to a mentor that he had in Colorado. Talked to this dude, the best salesperson I've ever met, told me he could teach me everything I wanted for 10 grand. I was 19, might as well have been 100 grand. But unbeknownst to my parents and my friends, I sold my car and wired a stranger all my money. And luckily, he was a good coach and not a scam artist.
I was waiting for the lost by 10, started over.
No. So we like, I'll never forget because he made me sign a 3-page document. And one of the clauses said wax on, wax off. So I had to do anything and everything he told me to do that was legal and ethical. And so it was crazy, like role playing, and like made me read a ton about psychology. So like we all make emotional decisions, justify them logically. And he was going to teach me how to do investor deals. So it was about wholesaling and owner financing. And this was 2002, which like the market was doing this.
Oh yeah.
So it was like the wrong time to become an investor. And like you would never do a lease option with an appreciated market.
When I became an investor, 04 to 06, 19 years old to 21, bought 3 homes, bankrupt by December 31st, 2008.
So I was just a little ahead of you on the movie.
Yeah.
So
the literal movie, The Big Short. Go watch it.
He made me get my license. I went back to the guy who turned me down. He had just bought the KW franchise for that region. And he's like, I was like, hey, can I come work for you now? And he's like, yeah, I'll sponsor you. I was like, oh, that feels special. So I actually bought 1% of the market center. I went on to sell my first house to myself because my landlord and I got into a fight and I had to find a new place to live. I got qualified with the loan officer down the hall and I convinced my dad to co-sign me on an FHA loan. I used my commission as my down payment. I bought a 4-bedroom for $180, got the seller to pay all my closing costs, and I house hacked before it was called house hacking. And that summer, I wrote a little script and I called all my fraternity brothers and I said, hey, let me talk to your parents about housing for next year. So I had my hook, you teach so well. And then once the parents would pick up the phone, like, what do you want to talk about? I said, for the same budget that you will pay for student housing, I can cover it for 4 years. And then it was about $8,000 and I sold 11 homes that summer and made $60,000, bought a 3 Series. And my senior year of college,
real estate.
I did $306,000 in GCI as a full-time student.
Beautiful.
So
That's awesome.
I was ahead of you because I graduated in 04.
Yeah.
I went on to buy 14 properties, leveraged, no income, no assets, FAGA mirror loans, and traded up to a X5. And by 08, I gave it all back.
Yeah. So this is super interesting, right? Because you've been an agent. You've built real estate technology. You've done so much in this industry. And this seems to be the hire that really works. I said, 3 years ago, I said, wow, to me, I've been friends with Sharran a long time. Like, wow, the single greatest executive hire over the last 10 years was Sharran. I said that a couple of years ago when he took president over at Real. And then you came in, run CEO at eXp. When I look at both of you guys, it's like been on the ground floor of this industry, a lot of roles, have the agent background, know what it's like to kind of be in the dirt. How did you smile when Sharran was, hey, I'm out of day-to-day at Real after 2 years? Because listen, I'll just say this. eXp's momentum to me over those 2 years, kind of before your hire, slowed down, and Real's momentum, Sharran's a game changer, was exploding. So did you say, whew,
so
competitor off the field?
Yeah,
I like that.
So I don't know if most people assume this or know this, but Sharran and I are really cool.
Yeah.
And I actually think the world of him. And I'm actually happy to say it on the record because I've said it from stage and he knows I've said this, like Sharran leveled me up, right? Like nothing better than a formidable competitor that I respect the shit out of, right? Like,
so do you miss that, not having him on the other side, or is part of you like
probably not?
Okay.
but like Sharran showed me what one person can do when they activate their voice.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, like you've noticed, I've been a lot louder.
Yeah.
It's not natural to me at all. Like this is actually a really good moment of transparency where, like, I'm not good at it. Like,
I think if Sharran was here, he would say, him doing all those, kind of keynotes going around. You were talking about your summer, like you're going to be everywhere. You're going to be with a lot of your agents over the summer. I don't think that was natural for Sharran. Sharran decided to like, I got to get really good at presentations, speaking my message.
So by the way, I think I'm actually good at that part where I was mesmerized by watching how he could talk to a camera with energy. Right. Like I'm a people person. So like I can do this format and like, I know you, I like feed off each other, but like where he just talks to the camera and teaches, I'm like, I can't get my head around that. And just like the volume of content. Yeah. Right. And again, it's like Well, I scaled a data company, and I very actively used to say that data is the new oil. And that was around 2014, 2015. And I no longer, especially with the rise of AI, data is no longer interesting because everyone has it at their fingertips and contextual way of like grabbing it. I think attention is the new oil, and it's been for a while. And I think especially with, how I think we're about to commoditize all forms of communication, written, digital, verbal. And so attention is going to be even more valuable.
And you're leaning into that. And out of, when you look at the big, obviously Sharran gets attention and content, but he's growing and independent. They're fast growing, but you're in a major vehicle, one of the big ones.
I call it a world-class destroyer.
Yeah. And that's one way to put it. But you're leaning into this. And so,
there's a couple exciting, like I'm 42. I am the first millennial to get the keys to one of these.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just getting warmed up, right? Like a couple of people said, hey, how long are you going to stick around? I'm like, where would I go?
Yeah.
Like, this is the culmination of my career, right? Like, just to fast forward, I went from, 300,000 losing my ass. But I don't know if you know this. By 2010, I was the number one team leader in the world at Keller Williams. I sold 400 to 600 homes for 8 years in a row. Number one on the planet. Real trends. I peaked at number 5 across all brands, and so like, this is what I do. Like, I am a practitioner. In my mind, I'm still a team leader. I just run the biggest team in the world.
Do you think more companies will kind of look at that and be like, wow, what eXp did with Leo, that's kind of the model we want to go to, somebody who's been all the way at almost every level of the business? Are you going to see that repeat, or is it going to be some of the same old executive hires?
I think that's a crystal ball question that I don't have the answer to. I mean, where again, my like, this is the culmination of my journey. I did do a detour. I call it like finishing school in debt in tech, right? Which is not normal, right? Like I scaled a very large debt company, sold, asset-backed securities to Wall Street in the tune of billions of dollars. And then I started a tech company, raised $50 million of growth equity, and like had a board. Learned words like total addressable market and CAC and LTV and adjusted EBITDA and margin. And like, I would not be qualified to sit in this seat without that like financial finishing school. So, I would, I pitched Founders Fund, Excel, Battery, like any iconic capital allocator in the world. I sat across the table from them, which was a super interesting experience
what was the biggest learning you had sitting across those pitches?
Well, first of all, in my mind, I am still just a realtor. And that was a limiting belief that I'm like, well, I'm not as good as these Stanford, Harvard, McKinsey, Goldman pedigree people. But what I learned was, it's like, I know my shit. Like, I know the life cycle. I know what makes them tick. I know the conversion ratios. Today, it's no different than the same skill sets when I'm sitting across from public capital allocators who are betting on the jockey and the horse.
If an agent's interested in eXp right now, there's a lot of, different pitches that are out there. What's the one thing you want your agent to share with people who are interested? Because almost 9 out of 10 eXp agents don't collect revenue share.
You're going where I was going.
It is not a realistic target for 90% or near 90% of agents. So what's the one thing you want your agents to be sharing with other agents?
So if you'll indulge me, I'll kind of just tell you what I saw when I got there, right? So I scaled a lending company, then a tech company. I exited both companies. I was mostly spearfishing in South Florida when Glenn got me on the phone through a mutual friend. And I'll leave the name out because after the pod, I'll tell you.
Yes.
But you respect my anonymity sometimes, so I appreciate you. Yeah. But a friend got us on the phone and he said, hey, do you want to be a CTO? Like, just jump right into it. I was like, 0 chance. I can play one on TV, but no, I don't like tech that much. I can do it. I founded and scaled a tech company, but like, I like people. Like, sales is my jam. And I got off the phone with him politely. And then he called me like 2 weeks later. He's like, I wasn't expecting you to hang up. He's like, next time you're on the West Coast, let's just hang out. And I was heading west, and we spent a day together, and we just got along. We barely talked about business. It was like the journey. And then he said, okay, what are you going to do next? And I said, good question. I've built and sold 3 companies, and I don't know, I'll probably do it a 4th. Like that's kind of directionally accurate. What's probably going to happen. And he said, okay, cool. What's the next idea? I was like, genuinely, I'm burnt out. I used to travel 200 days a year with Remind, which is exhausting. And like, part of like learning of like what fills my cup, and that broke my mind, body, and soul. Cause I get my energy from my loved ones. Like it's like, I say to my agents all the time, like, you guys are a distant second in my priorities.
Yeah.
In front of my wife and kids and parents and like my bloodline.
People think business travel is sexy in the beginning.
It's not.
It's like, it gets real unsexy
very fast.
Very fast.
And so when Glenn's like, what's the idea? And I said, I don't have one. And then he's like, cool. I have a little, and I'll never forget because it's like probably a script, but it was brilliant. And he said, I have a little company that became a big company. And now I have big company problems. So go back to like where you described it, losing momentum. And I think it's a fair way to say it. And his ask was like, just come hang out, like 2 months, 6 months, a year. Like, I'll give you whatever title you want that gives you the authority to go tell people what to do, but you don't have to be involved, because I didn't want to be public facing. And he gave me president of affiliate companies, which is kind of innocuous catch-all. And I sold some stuff, bought a company, renegotiated contracts, just kind of ran around having fun. And his only 2 rules was like, I need you to lean in on the tech, because he said, you're one of the few people in the industry that's fully bilingual. Like, you understand the transaction, but you actually understand workflows and requirements and speaking to engineers. And then the other one is, if you see bureaucracy, just break it. Like, he's like, as we've gotten bigger, I have a bunch of corporate folks around. And he's like, you are one of the few red-blooded entrepreneurs like myself that have similar DNA. And 6 months went by, and he said, hey, are you touching this? And I said, uh-huh. He's like, are you touching that? And I was like, yep. It's like, you're kind of running the whole company. So I'm going to give you new titles, Chief Strategy Officer, which according to Harvard Business Review, according to him, was a shadow CEO without having to still be the face of the company both. And because when I say public, people think I'm talking about public entity, but I mean more agent facing. Because actually since my first quarter there, I was on the first earnings call, and I've done every single one of them since. So even though I was in the background, the investors knew me. Then 6 months later went by, and he said, okay, I'm ready. And I was like, for what? He said, you're CEO. And I was like, I'm good. And what I told him was, this is the first time in my life I'm the fun uncle, your dad. And like, these are your kids. So I can go home and leave with you. And then 6 months later went by, and he's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm like, I'm good, bro. Like, I'm good. And he even had to tell the board, he's like, no, I genuinely think he doesn't want it. And then exactly March 15th, when the world shifted for us, and we were on the phone all weekend with him and our general counsel. And it was the agent's voice of concern. And they were like, hey, Glenn's like, someone's got to get loud, and it's not me. Like, you can articulate this stuff. And I told him, I was like, if I get loud, I'm not going to censor myself. Like, I'm going to be the unbridled version of myself, because I don't know how to do the other one. Like, I'm not corporate. And I said, and by the way, it could cost us like $10 or $20 million more. It's your money. And then that Monday morning, I went live on YouTube, and I don't know if you remember, but 53,000 people showed up concurrently. Jack Miller called me the next day. He's like, I think you've garnered the single largest concurrent audience ever in our industry, person, virtual, anything. And then by like Wednesday, CNN wanted to talk, and CNBC wanted to talk. And by Friday, Glenn called me, and he's like, so I was on with a bunch of our leaders, and all they want to know is when I'm stepping down. So you're CEO. Like, the board met, check your email. I don't care what you say. You're the CEO. And I was CEO like a week later.
And some of that's still ongoing.
Wait, no. We
sorry. Listen, I'm not a journalist. I wasn't even going to bring that stuff up, because I'm not a journalist, and I'm not.
No,
it's really.
I'm excited because I can finally say it. So we got preliminary approval on the Hooper case. Okay. It's not done till it's done, but it's a huge step forward in the,
Yeah. I think people ask me like, hey, the lawsuits that, and every company's got a lawsuit, but the lawsuits that eXp is dealing with, why don't you talk about it? It's like, man, I talk about they're going to have to deal with that, and it sounds like you have, but, that's not what I talk about. I talk about the business. How do we fix the business?
By the way, enterprises at scale always have like a whole bunch of
Yeah.
things always going on.
So like, there's always, you said there's big company problems. Like if you had one problem off your plate before next earning call, what would that problem be?
Well, let me go back to finishing the story. So, when I got there, I actually was very quiet. Like, I don't think you knew I was there. Right.
Yeah.
I
did, because TF said to me, he goes, dude, you need to meet Leo. Like that was the first time. He's like, he's doing some stuff at eXp, but you guys should just like get together. You should meet Leo.
Well, I don't know if he told you, he was one of the calls I made when I was deciding whether to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, why not? But so eXp's chapter 1, which is before me, was the model. And Glenn, like I gave him credit on stage, and I think he deserves the credit. He created a category. Like it didn't exist before that man dreamt it up.
Yep.
And I made fun of it. I'm sure you did. Like the avatars were like insane to us. It's like, what are we, a video game? And he changed state laws. Like states didn't allow virtual companies before he decided to change their minds through like boots on the ground lobbying and showing them that it was functional.
Yeah. Visionary.
What happened was it was 11 years of you're crazy, and then it worked. And then it's like, oh shit, that works. And everybody's like, that's what we're doing. And so chapter 1 was purely the model, bootstrapped, visionary, seat of his pants, just fixing it as you go along. And then we went from like 10,000 to 60,000, right? And then all of a sudden, when I looked, I was like, okay, the one thing we can do is become operationally excellent. And it's not sexy. I can recall conversations with top producers who are like, all right, pitch me the vision. I'm like, operational excellence. They're like, that's not inspiring. I'm like, yes, it is. Do you want to get paid faster than anyone else on the planet? Right? Like in 2024, and this is where my geek comes out, right? Like in 2024, we dispersed 66% of our commissions in under 14 minutes.
Yeah.
14 minutes. Like I'm not like my COO, I got from the airline industry. Like I want 30-second SLA turnarounds on 737s. That's how I think about the business, right? And it's through a protocol at the FDIC called real-time payments. We were in the pilot. We're the 3rd largest volume user of it. And, it costs $20 to $30 million of liquid cash I must keep on hand, because basically if I get a settlement statement and a copy of a check, I'll fund your commission by the time you get home, right? That to me is the core obsession, right? We process roughly 300,000 tickets on a monthly basis, pick up 30-some thousand live phone calls with less than 37-second hold time with a 90% resolution scoring. Like you can tell I get excited talking about this, right? Because too many companies I've seen in our industry think that they're tech companies and like actually kind of tip their nose down at us and be like, we're a tech company that happens to be in your little pedestrian industry. I'm like, no, I'm the world's greatest brokerage on the planet that, by the way, is pretty tech enabled. Out of our leadership team, 5 of us have ran software companies. And like, if you sit in one of my leadership meetings, you think we run a software company, because it's all about SLAs and KPIs and performance variances. And I track everything about everything. But at the end of the day, that's not how you talk to agents. Like we're in the service business of giving these folks unit economic fulfillment, right? It's like, how quickly can I pay you? How quickly can I onboard you? How quickly can I answer your broker question? How quickly can I disperse escrow? And that's how I think through the world. And so that was my one and single obsession when I got here. I like to be attractive. You have to be the most performant product on the planet.
Your model is, helping the agents. Their job is to be close to the consumer and figure out the customer. Is there a business model that works from the brokerage level with where margins are going today that can focus on, being consumer first facing brand on the brokerage side? I think the brokerages that really have margin do play agents my customer game, as opposed to customers is my customer game. Is there space for that?
Yeah, no, and I said it on stage and I'll say it here. I think we in 2025, we have kind of a 3-segment market. One is there are companies that are brand first, uncapped, that do think the brand adds the value. And again, I'm not actually knocking it. I think, because I talk to agents all the time, agents believe it and pay it. So good for them. The second is the cap and split model, which is both legacy and cloud. And then the third one is flat fee. And you have different avatars you serve. So I think the question you're asking is there business models that sit on top of those platforms? And so, for example, we have a business unit we built from the ground up when I got there called Revenos. Most people don't know that. It's my answer to Cardis. In 2024, we handed out 14,000 plus referrals with 4,300 closings for $1.6 billion in additional business to the agents that they did not source themselves. So I think there could be business units, but fundamentally you kind of need to decide what business you're in. And like, I think we just lived through a 10-year run where these well-capitalized companies, a lot of them thought they could do that. And I just think it's, customer acquisition cost is like grossly underestimated. Even, when people talk about Rocket and Zillow getting to the transaction, I mean, each one of those companies had sub 4% capture of real estate transactions. And if I were to take any random agent, and I think that you could do the same, they'll tell you that 80 to 90% of their transactions come from sphere of influence, right?
Yep.
I think the agent that stays in touch with the people they trust and know still can win the business. And so again, I'm not saying that what you're saying doesn't exist. I'm just saying I'm choosing not to, right? I want to be the best, most performant operating system for the best agents on the planet. So I make no bones about it. I'm most interested in being with the most productive solo and team leaders on the planet.
Yeah. And team leaders in particular have, the team list at eXp is sick. And you run down the teams on eXp and it's like,
and
dude,
I'm quite proud
operator.
Our top 250 teams in 2024 sold in excess of 75,000 homes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, the operational expertise in eXp teams is exceptional. And, some of the, financial terms that you were talking about, or like team leaders at eXp have figured out cost of acquisition costs. It's not 80, 90% sphere of influence driving their business. It's how do I acquire a customer? How do I do it over and over again? How do I systemize it? Where are teams going to be? It's been a 10-year, 20-year kind of like taking over market share, showing brokerages like there's a better way to do this. In 10 years from today, is that just accelerated and teams continue to, kind of swing the power from brokerages? What's your take on it?
I believe so. So
yeah.
The good news for me is I've been recorded for 20 years. Like I've been on a lot of stages saying the lot. And again, I'm wrong often, but I tend to be directionally accurate. Like sometimes I can't tell you when, but it's going in that direction. And so this is a really good context. 2002, I got licensed, first family reunion I went to. Bob Andrews was on stage. He was the number one agent in the world to like 243 units. And he happened to be in my market. And I was just like, Byron, I can tell you that like, I didn't believe in the realm of possibility. Like my brain couldn't, like, I was like, how can you do that? Like how? I just don't get it. In 2010, I stood on stage with 603 transactions, was this number one team in the world in unit count. And let's take 2010 to 2024, because it's the perfect finite amount of transactions, 4 million transactions in both years. And to your point of the operators I am blessed to be in business with, I would have been number 19 on unit count at 603 units at eXp in 2024. And on the Real Trends list that Clayton's event we're just at, I would have been number 77.
Yeah.
Which in 2010, I was number 5.
Yep.
And so, yes, directionally, it's going that way. And, in life, what's old is new and what's new is old, right? I do think that a lot of the mega teams provide the value of the brokerages of the 50s and 60s, like the Ebby Holidays, the Edinas, the Long and Fosters, like these legendary companies that you and I grew up seeing, right? They were like the last of them, the Golden Jackets and all that stuff. But so one thing that I'm hyper aware of, and that's where I think we win, is with teams specifically, is one, the business is no longer just a radius, right? Like Avery Carl, I don't know if you've met her. You should probably do a podcast with her. She was our number one agent in 2023, 956 units, 599 million across 21 markets. Niche expert. So short-term rentals. She has a book. She's got a national pod. So she creates a funnel at scale nationally. And then she's got a hub and spoke model with an HQ and then operators in the Smokies, Destin, Florida, Gatlinburg. So like she's hyper specialized with one message. She's got boots on the ground operators, but when it rolls up, one cap, individualized caps, we give her ranking, we pay, we do all the fulfillment for her. She doesn't have to sign a lease. She doesn't have to, like, she can roll into Colorado. I can have her business in Colorado in 24 hours if she tells me to. Mm-hmm. And she can roll out of Colorado when rates double, right? And again, like our DNA is mega team. I don't know if you know this, but Glenn was a mega team leader.
Yeah.
He did 3,000 units. Like if you ask Ben Kenny on stage or on a pod who taught him SEO, he's like, Glenn is the GOAT of that, right? Like, so the guy who founded and the other guy are obsessive, compulsive nerds that love team building, right? Like it's just kind of who we are in our DNA. But by the way, I'll be the first one to give shit to all the team leaders because like I love our top 50 solos. I'm like, those people's margin is 80%.
Yeah. And
they're pulling in 2 or 3 or 4 million bucks. And you guys have very cute vanity numbers at times, right? Because like I do every 90 days I pick a city and we do a retreat and I co-lead it with, like I just brought in Shep Black. I had Tom Ferry in February. I'm bringing in Jared in September.
Smart.
But it's like, I truly don't think one is better than the other, right? Like bigger is not better.
No.
Better is better. And like
profitable is better.
Well, this is the part that I would like to drive home for people. Cause I think whenever you hear someone with my story or like you go to a conference, you're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, it's your journey. And I really am like, I'm 42. So I'm in like that very pronounced second season. And I think there's seasons to life. Like when you're in your 20s, if you're talking about life balance, you're a fool. Straight up.
Yeah.
I did 12 hours a day for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's when I beat everybody. Like I got my 10,000 hours in my 20s. And
in your 30s is your 20s now. So even if you're talking about balance in your 30s, you've lost it.
But I still didn't have any in my 30s. Like I went hard until I was like 38. And again, like now I have more balance than most of you think, right? Like I don't take a single phone call before 9:30. Mm-hmm. And I'm done by 4:45 so I can take my son to jiu-jitsu and my daughter to singing. And like I make breakfast because I choose to. And like I'm so obsessed with numbers that like, bro, I have like 1,200 more put her to bed nights before she's like, get out of my room, Dad. Right? Lock the door. Like, and like I'm never gonna get, and like I'm hyper aware that we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like I my great aunt, my aunt just passed away from very invasive cancer. And in the end, it's like, who gives a shit about where I ranked on the list or the Swanepoel list or like, did I beat somebody? Do I have more market? I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Like I want my bloodline to go, that was a good man.
Because in the end, that's all you got in is family.
That's all we got.
I was having that conversation with somebody who's been with me a long time and making a tough decision to kind of move some pieces around. Like all there is in the end is the family.
You saw me photo finish it to be on stage at 1:45. And I put my son and daughter to bed last night. And as I was putting them both to bed, I'm like, I just hope you appreciate, what I put my body through. like I woke up at 4 a.m. to take a direct flight and then be in an Uber. Cause I just like one more night makes a difference.
Yeah. Leo Pareja, good place to finish. We'll leave some for BAM BBQ.
I like it. I'm excited. I'm honored you're having me.
Yeah. This July, we got a lot more to talk about. Make sure there's a link down below. It's our free virtual event. The free virtual events are huge. Leo's going to be there. Sharran's going to be there. It's going to be a great lineup. So sign up for that down below. Let us know what you thought of this one. Leo was outstanding.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Good little appetizer before BBQ. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.